10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, here on the Exceptional Conservative Network. That's right, this is the No Soundbites Allowed podcast. Now, we are retaping this. We were live. We were running into some technical issues, and so we wanted to redo some of the segments just so it was clear in case anything dropped off, so that you would be able to hear the full comments without any technical issues. We apologize for that. It's one thing about being live. If there's a technical issue, you try and make the best of it and you keep going forward. So we wanted to get this replay for you to complete our thought. Now, we were talking at the time about the shame. Oh, oops, wrong image. There we go. We were talking about Senator Dianne Feinstein and her impact and what's been going on with her, with the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah, who wishes to see death to America. This is not a new thing. They've been talking about that since, 1979, 1976. There has been 40 years of problems with Iran and the United States. And that Iran has been looking to see the United States destroyed, the big Satan, as they call it, versus the little Satan, which they consider Israel. So there have been lots of tensions for decades on this, and there has been no president who's been able to resolve this. It is an issue. It is an ongoing issue. In fact, these issues have been substantial at times, talking about what we see. And we're going to take a little trip back in time, going back on the Voss political commentary site. You can go to it yourself, and you'll be able to see this. We did an article back on, July 14th of 2016, and we were talking about the issue of the Iran nuclear deal at that time, and what its ramifications would be. One of the big things that we wanted to remember at that time is the then CIA director, John Brennan, who was a supporter of Obama and the Obama administration, mentioned about, he had been talking about the Iran nuclear deal, and he mentions, quote, Kerry and crew. Kerry was the Secretary of State at the time, John Kerry, and crew left a loophole a mile wide when they effectively allowed Iran to conduct all the illicit work it wants outside of Iran in countries like North Korea or perhaps Sudan. In fact, going back to Secretary Kerry himself in 2016, he stated, I think some of it, in speaking about part of the Iran nuclear deal being the release of funds to the Iranian government that had been held for decades, billions of dollars. He mentions, I think that some of it will end up in the hands of the IRGC or other entities, some of which are labeled terrorists. Now, what he's speaking about specifically in that conversation, that statement on January 21st of 2016, was the Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is considered a terrorist group. This is the wing of Iran's militant military that supports terrorism around the world, in particular to attack the United States and other Western nations because of its fanatical religious beliefs. So as part of the Iran nuclear deal, the United States government freed up about $150 billion, actually more, dollars for the Iranian government, which then went into terrorism around the world, which the Obama administration was well aware of and supported, therefore technically allowing the United States to fund terrorism around the world. The tensions have never gotten lower, even with the Iran nuclear deal, because in in 2015, the Ayatollah of Iran was mentioning even as Secretary Kerry was out speaking about how great the deal was, the Iran nuclear deal, and how it would make the world safer, the Ayatollah of Iran was saying, death to America. The deal doesn't stop them from making nuclear weapons, nor does it stop the Iranian government from killing America, destroying America. This is the back setting that we need to remember, because very often in the news media, they forget that. They move on to the next story. They forget what happened in the past, even though it has a direct impact on the current. So that brings us up to where we are now, and jumping ahead to 2019. We know that the 2016 election happened. The Democrats have promised that there would be World War III, whether it's with North Korea or whether it's with Iran, that President Trump is somehow going to start World War III. We've heard that consistently from 2016 until today, and it'll keep going into 2020. So in this year, back on May 15th, so roughly 13 days ago, about 2 weeks ago, according to the New York Post, and that's, we have it here. There it is, the New York Post. In their article on May 15th, Senator Tom Cotton says U.S. would win war against Iran in 2 strikes. Now, Senator Cotton out of Arkansas is a Republican, and he has a very strong point of view, to say the least, that as tensions have been growing with Iran, he's looking at, he says, quote, we could win a war with Iran. He's asked the question, that could America win a war with Iran? And he said, quote, yes, 2 strikes, the first strike and the last strike. Now, that's a very strong, obviously a very, very strong position from the American government, and obviously meant to reach the ears of the Ayatollah. But what we see that did happen is when they heard that was on the 13th of May, what we did see is that on May 16th, a day later, Dianne Feinstein is seen and reported by Politico on the Political Playbook what Dianne Feinstein's phone told us. Now, what we find out is first thing in the morning on May 16th, in response to the comments by Senator Tom Cotton, we see that Senator Dianne Feinstein is walking across Washington, D.C., and she is in contact, according to her iPhone, with the Foreign Minister Javad Zarif. Now, that name may not seem very familiar to most people. Javad Zarif is the Iranian architect of the Iran nuclear deal. He was in direct conversation with Secretary Kerry in negotiating the deal, putting it together so that Iran would have the best options possible, which they received, which disturbed the CIA director, John Brennan, at the time. And so we see that Dianne Feinstein, in reaction to Cotton, decided that in reaction to Senator Cotton's statements about Iran, that Iran should worry about the United States and that they should back down, essentially, by saying that we could win a war against them, a nuclear war. Dianne Feinstein was reached by Iran via Zarif, and they started having comments. Now, the interesting thing here is when Dianne Feinstein's communications director was asked about it, he says he can't comment on who the senator does or does not speak with. Actually, he can. He is the communications director. He would know if she's speaking with Iran. And we see that Dianne Feinstein later in the day came out and mentioned, as I quote, war isn't necessary to solve a problem when both sides want a solution. I urge Secretary Pompeo to reach out to the foreign minister, Javad Zarif, who I know doesn't want to see conflict with the United States. So essentially, Senator Tom Cotton comes out and he makes a comment that the United States, he supports President Trump, and he wants Iran to back down, that their ambitions with the nuclear weapons, which were not prevented by the Iran nuclear deal, and more importantly, the missile development to create an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile, which is the weapon necessary to get a bomb from Iran into the United States. That is their number one effort, because they can create a nuclear weapon in less than a year. The question is, that isn't the problem for Iran. The question and problem for Iran is getting that nuclear weapon to the United States. They don't have a missile that could do that. The Iran nuclear deal did not prevent them from developing a missile that could bring that nuclear weapon to the United States and therefore threaten us. That is what is critical to know about the Iran nuclear deal. It allows them to create intercontinental ballistic missiles, which is the problem. That's the big deal. So we see that Senator Cotton takes the position along with President Trump on a strong defense of the United States. Iran reaches out, presumably reaches out to Dianne Feinstein, or Senator Feinstein reached out to Iran. It's unclear which way that happened. And in response, and says, hey, how do you feel about this? What's going on? And their response from Iran is, oh, we don't want to have a war. They've always said they don't want to have a war. They've also always said that they want to kill every single American, Democrat, liberal, progressive, or anyone else. They want to kill all of America, period. Our existence is a bane to them in general. So she comes out, and now she is now taking, by this statement on May 16th, Dianne Feinstein is now taking the position of Iran. She is being the mouthpiece for the Ayatollah of Iran by saying that they want to have peace and you should talk to Iran, even though she has nothing to do with it. She's just inserting herself into this on Iran's behalf, which is troubling and very, very scary. It's a very disturbing view. But what happens next? Well, on the 20th of May, we see that Iran steps forward after saying that they want to have nothing but peace. According to Reuters, Iran increased the amount of uranium that they will enrich by 400%. 400%. Now, that's a big deal. That is a very, very big deal. It's a very short article, and basically Iran just says that they're going to increase by fourfold the rate of production of uranium that they're going to be making. Okay? And that's really straightforward, except it's not quite that straightforward. There's a piece of information that's missing from the Reuters piece, and that is, and we had to go to the Russian Times to find it, but also being reported on the 20th of May, is that Iran announces not only just a fourfold increase of the uranium, but more importantly, they said that they would achieve and increase the percentage of enrichment to 20%. Now, let's get this clear. Let me clarify this. It's not just that they're increasing the amount of uranium they have, they're increasing how rich it is. For you to use, uranium is used in nuclear power throughout the world, and Iran uses nuclear power for most of its power. Not oil, but surprising a lot of people. They don't really use oil, they have nuclear energy, or at least they have been transitioning to nuclear energy, I should say that. And part of that program is you need uranium, but uranium doesn't need to be enriched beyond about 3, 4, 5% to be able to run a nuclear reactor. Once you start getting beyond that, then it's very questionable about what you're using that uranium for. Because higher enrichment means you can use a dirty bomb for terrorist activity. It's well on the process to be able to be used as a nuclear weapon, although it needs to be enriched to about 90%. So I'm trying to give you a lot of information in very little time here. So essentially, what Iran is doing is they're looking to get it to 20%, which puts it far into the path of being either a dirty bomb or being a nuclear weapon. And they're saying that they will hit that target within 4 days by May 24th. Now, that's not me saying that. That's being reported by the Russian Times on May 20th in an expansion on the information from what we learned from Reuters, which just said that Iran is going to increase the amount. That's a huge difference. And that is a signal of a more militaristic use of uranium and that they are moving forward with their nuclear weapons program. That is scary. So let's go. What does that bring us to? Well, that brings us to what we see being reported by the Jerusalem Post. If you notice, I had to go to a lot of foreign news agencies to get a lot of the information and to fill in the gaps that are not being spoken about here in the United States. But we see that it was reported as of the 26th of May during the Memorial Day holiday, when most of the news media in America was not talking about anything except the Memorial Day holiday, a day that news around the world seems to be missed. And one of the things that was missed is that there was a conversation that actually the foreign minister of Iran, Mr. Zarif, Javed Zarif, actually met with Senator Dianne Feinstein. And they had dinner and they talked. And this is the thing that really drives me crazy about this, is the thing that they wanted to talk about. Here's what it was. According to Jerusalem Post, the Iranian foreign minister's trip to the United States was designed to undermine the Trump administration's tough talk on Iran and to stir divisions. This is according to Axios. So here you go. So what we see, based on this information, is that Senator Dianne Feinstein has been actively taking the position as a mouthpiece for the Ayatollah of Iran, the gentleman who wants to see death to every American, not just President Trump, not just the Trump administration. For the last 40 years, Iran has been saying they want to kill every single American. And Dianne Feinstein, through her actions, is working as a mouthpiece for Iran in meeting with them to be able to destroy America. She is being a mouthpiece for this government who says that on one hand they say, oh, no, we want nothing but peace. And on the other hand, they have increased their uranium enrichment, the amount of enrichment, and they are saying the death to America. And they're coming to Dianne Feinstein to stir disagreement, to undermine the president in his attempt to hold them accountable and prevent them from having nuclear weapons. I have to say, this is troubling. This is very troubling. There's a problem here, and the problem isn't President Trump. Whether you agree with his Iran policy or not is not really important. What is laid out is that while the president and some of his supporters, like Senator Tom Cotton, have taken a very strong stance, we have also seen that President Trump has said that he does not wish to have a war. He made that clear. Again, I will go back to the same Politico article where Dianne Feinstein denied that she was in conversations with Iran and wanted to avoid talking about the fact that she was being the mouthpiece of Iran and the Ayatollah. And it was that President Trump is not convinced, in that same article, the very next paragraph, that President Trump is frustrated by some of those in his administration who are being alleged to be in favor of attacking Iran, and that he is not convinced that it is the right time to attack Iran. So we already know that the United States is not looking to go to war, even though Iran is amping up its actions to try to provoke the United States. And we know that while we are taking a strong stance, as the United States occasionally have when we haven't had a president who's into appeasement like President Obama was, what we have seen is that this has never gone further. We just take our strong stand that we are a nation that will defend ourselves against existential threats. And the reaction is that Dianne Feinstein reaches out, or is reached to, the Iranian government knows that they have an ally in Dianne Feinstein to be able to go over and promote their view against the president to disable this nation. That is troubling. That is the timeline. I've just given you the articles. You can read them yourself and decide for yourself. But I am troubled by this when we see a senator who is also known for having a staff that are giving information to China, communist China, for 20 years. And this same individual who is connected to communist China is now the same senator who is connected to Iran, which wants to destroy America. And she is taking their side over the U.S. side. You know, if you don't agree with a more militaristic viewpoint of the America, that's fine. You don't have to. If you disagree with an aggressive stance towards Iran, fine. You can do that. But that doesn't mean that you have to meet and speak for the Ayatollah of Iran as he says, death to America, a policy stance that they've had for 40 years. That troubles me. We're talking about the Logan Act. We're talking about sedition. It could be a lot of things. But I think we really need to question, why is Dianne Feinstein apparently taking the position of Iran versus the United States? And who is she really supporting? Where are her constituents? Do they believe that Iran should be supported or that America should be defended? I really would like to see that. But I want to hear your thoughts. You tell me, and I look forward to hearing what you think about it. I'll talk to you again very soon.